Hello and welcome to Seconds Out Live, where we ain't singing, we bring in drama. Flip you and your flipping mama. Because while we do keep it as real as Penitentiary still here on SO Live, we do want to safeguard the monetization. I'm sure Tupac himself would have approved. Delighted to be joined, or I'm Danny Flexen, I should say, first of all, and delighted to be joined by Ayman Khan, who's actually on holiday week this week, but has kindly and selflessly agreed to join us still for SO Live, working on one of his days off. Ayman, are you crazy?
I must be crazy. I think I'm crazy. There you go. There's a little
Green.
rendition for you. A little bit of rendition like our old pal Tyson Fury. Great hits are all out there on the karaoke bar. He's come out, he's grabbed the mic, he's broken his silence. Can't wait to get into another week of Seconds Out Live, another edition of Seconds Out Live with everyone in the chat as well. To make sure you contribute, click the like button, subscribe. I'm here on my holiday, my day off. That's got to be worth something, surely. Looking forward to speaking about all the boxing coming up today.
Started with Tupac and CeeLo Green, legends in their respective genres. It's all downhill from here, surely. Let's hope not. Let's hope not. And we will be talking all about Tyson Fury and indeed Artur Beterbiev against Dmitry Bivol in due course. But if you haven't joined us before, we are the most interactive show on boxing YouTube. Please do drop us a like, a thumbs up, whatever you want to call it, a subscribe if you haven't already. But more importantly, get your questions and comments in on the live chat, and we will get through as many of them as we can before the end of the show. But yeah, earlier this week, last week now, Tyson Fury made an appearance at the Liverpool show, topped by Nick Ball, and we will be talking about Nick's fight with Ronnie Rios a bit later. And came out swinging, it's fair to say. We haven't heard much from Tyson Fury since the first defeat of his professional career against Oleksandr Usyk. It's been a few months. As far as we're aware, he's not quite back in full training camp just yet for the December 21st rematch. We've seen some quotes attributed to him, but this is the first time, I think, for a lot of people that they've seen him direct, being asked questions. Not particularly challenging ones on the whole, but enough to say he is approaching that rematch with plenty of confidence. Some might say misplaced given what went on in the first fight, although it was very close. I've seen so many different opinions since that, Usyk will always have his number. Going all the way to Fury only needs to make a few little tweaks and he'll dominate the rematch. Ayman, what did you make of not just Fury's words, but his mindset, his approach over the weekend?
I sort of like it. I like it when Fury starts getting dialed in, and I think Fury's like he's a little. It's the Fury cycle, isn't it? For me, like he starts off. He comes out with the usual hits, the usual songs on the album, on the new album, I guess we'll call it for this one, for this fight with Usyk, the rematch. And sometimes, we kind of towards the end of the album, towards the end of track 12, we sort of get tired of the kind of the same old stick that Fury will come out. But it's been a bit of time. He's kind of he's receded back from social media. He hasn't done much interviews. He seems to be kind of just focusing on, just life outside of boxing and looking after his family and his kids and getting away from all the hubbub of the boxing world. But now he's back out. Now it's sort of like this is the start of dialing into that training camp. This is the start of zoning into Oleksandr Usyk and getting ready to prepare a game plan for him. A few tweaks, like he's saying, to turn a close defeat into a victory, whether it would be a close victory or a resounding one for Fury. He and his team will have looked at the fight backwards and forwards, of course, looking forwards to trying to turn that victory, that defeat into a victory and turn it into a victory. They feel like maybe they only have to do a couple of things, maybe in the same sort of way that they approached the Wilder fight the first time, where he danced around and was the Fury of old, and then he found himself on the canvas and got back up and then took it to Deontay Wilder. Maybe they'll look at everything that happened in the Usyk fight, and so the moments where he really took it to Usyk, it looked like Usyk was on the cliff edge and ready to fall with another push or a punch from a giant at the top of the hill. It seems like to me that Tyson Fury has got himself in his mindset. He knows what he's going to do. He's stuck with his team, most importantly. Whether the dynamics of the team change on fight night is another thing, but the team is the same. The band is back together and they're ready, fit, and firing. And I like the lines from Tyson Fury. I like it when he's kind of saying F you and F this and F that. It's him against the world. He's happy to take on all comers. He's a man of the people as well, too. I saw him take photos with every man, his man and his dog. And he could have easily said to poor old Ames, who was trying to get a word with him, he could have easily said, kick rocks, kid. But no, he's happy to answer one or two of my questions. They're on there on a short, if you want to see it. 8 seconds of gold with Tyson Fury. A couple of you guys have checked in on it already. But yeah, I like this Tyson Fury. I like it when he starts to, and even when it gets a bit, you know, you hear the lines of like, I'm dipping my hands in petrol. It's like, oh, okay, we've heard this one again. Every now and again, he comes up with something fun and funny, and I'm looking forward to some of the jibs and jabs and jibes heading into this this fight with Usyk the second time around.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the paraphrasing of "Hit 'Em Up" by Tupac, although you know it was paraphrasing rather than direct repetition, which disappointed me a little bit. And it wasn't kind of self-censorship either, because it wasn't the swear words he was muted. He just kind of mangled some of the lines. But that aside, you know, big fan of the Gypsy King as I am, and of Tupac, of course, as well. Although I always did kind of prefer Biggie, I've got to say. That's by the by. Tyson Fury, as you say, dialed in for the rematch. It's whether mindset, focus, concentration were the main pivotal factors in his defeat initially, as to, you know, increased concentration this time around will be the thing that makes the difference. Hasn't changed his corner team, as has been widely comments and questions flying in. But let me get back to it. Bully Boxer's just here to read the haters' comments. I'm sure you will not be disappointed. Talk to YouTube. He's got loads of comments on here, but I'll go through as many as I can. Tyson has to do what he did to Wilder. Go for it. Don't let him move. Make him run and get him. I mean, it's a lot. I would suggest it's a lot harder to pin Usyk down than it was Wilder. What's going to be different in the rematch is my question, and how will you execute it? I'll ask Fury when I get a chance to speak to him, but we will give our own opinions on that as we go. El Major says Usyk is about 100 times better than Windmill. That won't work. Oh, there you go. El Major's done my job for me now. I wish I would have read that first. Buster B, what's going to be different in the rematch is that Fury gets knocked out within 6 rounds. That's bold. But as we're talking about that, Buster B, before I go into the rest of the chat, we are going to put the poll out nice and early. It's a very simple one this week. What happens in the rematch? Or who wins the rematch, rather? Usyk, Fury. Let us know what you think. We will read out the results of the poll at the end of the show, but Modfather Vinny will put that up in the live chat now. So please do vote. Talk to YouTube here again says Tyson is a monster when he's in that zone. He was trying to play chess with the best chess player this time. I think go for it the same way he did with Wilder. Don't pull back because Usyk is dangerous with chess. We said chest, but I'm assuming he means chess. Thunder Road says if Tupac is in the title, Danny should have opened with Hit 'Em Up. And as I told Thunder Road in the chat, I did open with a line from Hit 'Em Up. I'm not going to do the whole song a cappella, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, to be fair. Pulse Life says Tyson needs to get back on the coke and come flying out in a Batman suit. Other drinks are available, including Coke Zero, which I applaud because it's sugar-free. Talk to YouTube again says we need that warrior back because he was trying to play with a great boxer, but go for it. Don't let him move, hurt him, and he will crumble. DB Cooper 1, who's a huge fan of Ayman, as we know, even though he still can't spell his name, says, go on, Ayman lad. Give us your best CeeLo Green crazy rendition, or maybe a Fury fave of American Pie. A bit of a Don Henley. Is it Don Henley, American Pie? Thunder Road now says, really, was it one of Pac's verses? I didn't recognize it. That song is legendary. You didn't recognize it? Come on, it's one of the most well-known verses in the song. Never mind. Talk to you said, big respect to SecondsOut for the content. Thank you very much. We're here every week. DB Coupon now says, dipping his hands in petrol. Always thought Fury was more of a dipping my hands in red diesel stolen from the local farmer kind of guy. We go into a whole kind of diatribe about Fury and local farmers, but I don't think we need to go back there. We're not here to dish out history lessons on a regular basis. Buster B, Fury has 0 chance of winning the rematch. I think any heavyweight has probably got some chance, in the sense that, you know, they can all punch, and Fury has often been accused of not quite punching his considerable size. But given the skills he possesses and the size he is, he's always going to have a chance. Talk to YouTube said Tyson went to play a chess game with a good player. He needs to go in there and stick it on him. Don't give him a chance to move around, make him start running. Then he's got him where he wants him. I don't know. I think Usyk's very effective off the back foot as well, but it's something we can talk about. Ayman, I mentioned just before we went into the chat about the corner team remaining the same. How significant do you think that is? Was the criticism of the corner and its impact on the fight result, do you think that's been overblown?
I think with someone like Tyson, if it's worked so far and if it got you, sure, you didn't win, But on the judges' scorecards and for my scorecard as well, it was a close fight, and it could have, for a little bit of extra output here and there, a little bit of effective aggression here and there, you might have overturned that loss into a victory, and it worked to a degree. I think really what it's got to be is just kind of shoe shine and polish really the instructions and understand who's got to speak when and who's leading the corner and what kind of the roles are here, and that to be exercised or executed, or the instructions to be kind of sorted out between them during the round, and then they can feed it to Tyson just as direct as possible then and there. And then if they need to pass the baton on to something else, be as blatant as, all right, John, speak, you speak now. What have you seen? If there needs to be anything additional, but that needs to kind of be sorted out between the three of Sugar Hill, John Fury, and Andy Lee, and Tyson can focus on his training. So it's really not something that will practically affect Fury in his preparations. It's a purely fight night thing. And yeah, I mean, like, even then, Fury is such a kind of crazy, erratic type of character. Maybe he kind of works in that curse. Maybe he kind of works in, like, hearing this here and hearing that there and deciphering it all for himself. But really, this is a bit of fine tuning. This is like, the analogy I'm going to use here is the old kind of analog radios, when you're trying to tune in and dial in to your favorite radio station. You get the fuzz, and then you finally get it right onto the radio station you're trying to listen to. It doesn't matter these days with DAB and all that sort of stuff, and now you can download your favorite songs or use Spotify. But back in the days, and I'm old enough to remember, you had to kind of really fine tune to get to that radio station. It's just like that, kind of drowning out any extra noise and just making sure everything can be shifted down to real world kind of polished instructions. And if it works great. But sometimes, with John, he's a bit of a lightning rod. I remember the early days of Seconds Out Live, Dan. You used to get it quite a bit, didn't you? And you played it off well. John Fury is someone as well who just gets it. Whatever he does, he kind of gets it. People like to lay in on John Fury. A couple of years back, he was kind of like he couldn't do anything wrong, and people have sort of changed their perspective a little bit. And because of the way he speaks and his tone of voice, I think some people think like, oh, John's interrupting here. John's kind of this, that, and the other. You never truly get the real reflection of a corner, because you only get bits and bats of whatever they put out on TNT Sports or whatever it is that's whatever broadcaster is putting out that instruction. So we can't get a real true reflection of it. But if Tyson trusts John Fury, then it's on him. It's his decision and it's his accountability for it. If he trusts John Fury, Sugar Hill, and Andy Lee, that's the accountability that he has to take for making that decision as well too. So Tyson here is saying, look, I'm happy with this, so you should be too. This is my best hand here, and I'm going with it for the rematch with Oleksandr Usyk. So we've got to see how it plays out.
Yeah, not the first time I've been compared to John Fury, I've got to say. I've never... I don't get into fights at fairgrounds necessarily. Well, I did nearly get kicked out of Legoland once, but that's a story for another day. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the reception to the corner issue, especially with it being a father in the corner, because we've seen with the recent victory of Daniel Dubois over Anthony Joshua, Dubois' father was absolutely, given so much praise for his impact, not just on that fight, but the previous two as well, with Jarrell Miller and Filip Hrgovic, and the influence he has over his son, the largely positive influence over the last few fights. Incredible run of form that Daniel Dubois has been on. Whereas John Fury, they're clearly very close as well, him and Tyson. And because the result didn't go their way, he's now being castigated and highlighted as one of the main reasons for the defeat. In the similar way to Stan Dubois was given a huge amount of credit for being a catalyst for the victory over Joshua. I wonder why the reception to the two is so different and how much impact these guys have. Like, we talk all the time about how much impact trainers have in the corner. I spoke to Anthony Croller about it. He does a weekly kind of video column, if you like, with us. And we're saying to him, what do you do? Because he's just suffered defeat with Rhiannon Dixon against Terry Harper. What do you do when everything's gone perfectly in camp and the fighter just fails to reproduce either the performance level or the tactical plan on the night? You can't really beat yourself up over it. There's only so much a trainer can do. And I guess it's similar with the father, although Daniel Dubois is always looking to his dad at ringside for kind of reassurance or praise or, whatever it might be, vindication perhaps that he's doing the right thing. Tyson Fury's not dependent to the same extent. But then how much blame can we attribute to these people if we're giving them that amount of praise in the first place? When Tyson Fury was on good form and the times when he's won with his dad in the corner or in the gym, I don't recall John Fury being given a huge amount of credit. And he plays it down himself as well. He talks about, my greatest achievement is, he puts it in more colourful language, but conceiving Tyson Fury rather than any kind of influence or tactical nous that he's passed on to his son. So it's an interesting one because he's never been the head trainer for his son, as far as not for Tyson, he has been for Tommy. Tyson's been with two different uncles, in the late Huey, may he rest in peace, and more recently to that Peter, also Ben Davison, now Sugar Hill Stewart, Andy Lee, but never his dad. His dad's never been the main man. So it's interesting, that dynamic and that relationship, and just how much it will play into the result of the rematch with Usyk, because Usyk's, very settled team. Nothing's really changed there. He'll look at that first fight. There was a wobble in the middle rounds when Tyson came on strong, and they'll look to kind of make sure that doesn't happen again. They'll want a more comfortable victory this time around. But I guess the hope that Fury and his team can kind of cling on to is that for 3 rounds, it looked like it was very much going Tyson Fury's way and that he was on his way to victory. My point of view, he started coasting a little bit in that time. That gave Usyk the kind of window to really prise it open and kick the door down. I'm mixing my metaphors here, but you get the point. And come back into the fight and eventually take over and nearly stop Tyson. So I think, if he can establish that edge again, either in the early rounds or in the middle rounds, but then hold on to it, not coast, not become complacent, which I think he did in the middle rounds, the showboating. I know a lot of people have said the showboating was more him running out of ideas. I think it was at a time when he was, for the most part, doing well in the fight. So I think it was more that he became complacent. He thought, I've turned the tide here. I'm just going to cruise to the finish line. And Usyk had other ideas. And at the very elite level, you can't cruise. You can't coast, even if you're as talented and unorthodox as a Tyson Fury. Just going back to the chat there. Where are we? Buster B. Mark George says Fury is winning the rematch. DB Cooper 1 says, shouldn't both Fury and Usyk be in camp right now? They both seem to be enjoying their newfound wealth, gallivanting around the world. And who can blame them, DB Cooper 1? Wouldn't we all be doing the same thing if we had the same riches? Should they be in camp? I mean, it's still 10 weeks out from the fight. I imagine they are both ticking over. But in terms of getting into serious training, 8 to 10 weeks, I think is probably enough. It's not like they have to struggle to make weight. They're not in a weight-making division. I think that comes into it as well. Talk to YouTube says, I think Tyson won, but it was round 9 and messed it up for him. If you mean you think, scorecard-wise, your own personal scorecard, Fury came out on top, I mean, fair enough, but I don't think it was close enough that you could call Fury a winner in that fight. Buster B, Fury's been down almost 10 times in his career. That is a concerning thing. I don't care how many times he's got up, but rather the amount of times he's been down. Fury has no chin. Yeah, I don't go along with that. I think it is more about the amount of times you get up and how quickly you recover. We saw Anthony Joshua against Vladimir Klitschko, further back reference than the Dubois fight. And he was on, legs all over the place for a round and a half, and Klitschko wasn't able to finish him. Whereas Tyson Fury will get rocked, almost stopped, and 30 seconds to a minute later, he'll seem fine. So I think that is important. It's all very well putting someone down, but keeping them down is a much different thing. And only one of those two things actually wins the fight. Putting someone down gets you an extra point in a round. It doesn't win you the fight necessarily, unless you can keep the opponent down. Prison TV says, safe my G, as it's not plural. I don't know if he's referring to Ayman or myself. I like to think we're both G's. But thank you, Prison TV, either way. Greedax says, every man and his dog says, bring it to Usyk, as did Fury. Then he got in there with him and ran away all fight from a man half his size. He didn't run away all fight. In the middle rounds where he did win 3 or 4 rounds, he was coming forward for the most part and trying to pin Usyk down. So it wasn't the whole fight. And I wouldn't call boxing on the back foot running away necessarily. Using your extra reach or your reach advantage against a nifty, fast in and out boxer like Usyk isn't a completely foolish thing to do. I can understand why they tried those tactics. Greedax goes on, Dubois' father yapping in the corner and Daniel telling Don Charles to relax and ignoring him is going to cause problems in the future. Mark my words. You may well be right, but as of right now, particularly the last 3 fights, it's clearly had a positive impact. Dubois was, meandering after the defeat to Joe Joyce, and look where he is now. In my own league, says Fury is grossly overrated. He got schooled by Usyk, who chased him down the whole fight. Only ignorant people listening to bias, it should be biased in my own league, as we're talking about ignorance, not bias. TNT Sports think he won. Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think Fury won the fight. I think he lost, but I think it was still relatively close. And I think there are seeds of hope. You know, I think there's elements that he did well that he can capitalize on. So I think there's reasons to be hopeful going into the rematch. DB Cooper won. He seems to be having a pop at Ant Crawler. SO must have more money than DAZN. You chaps got your own ethical Dan Kinahan. That's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? What would an ethical Daniel Kinahan look like? I dread to think. But yeah, maybe that's another conversation for another day. Buster B says, we forgot that when Fury brought it to Usyk, he almost got knocked out. Yeah, but this is what I mean about coasting and being complacent. I think he did get to that extent, similar to Joshua maybe in the closing seconds against Dubois. And we've seen it in other fights as well. Kind of coasting, thinking you've got it in the bag, thinking you've turned the tide, and then walked onto a shot and suddenly all at sea, as Tyson Fury was. Talk to YouTube says, I think his dad, this is Dubois now. I think actually. No, I think this is Tyson. I think his dad was too much in his ear. His dad's got to stay away from him. I think Tyson won the first fight, just round 9 messed it up. Still think he won it. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but I'd say it's a minority one in this case. I don't think many people would have Fury as the winner on the cards. I think even Frank Warren, did he have Fury? I think he said he had Fury by a round, and that's his promoter. So, I mean, when your own promoter's only got you ahead by a round, you've got to say you probably lost the fight. But yeah, Fury's accepted it. It seems he's not challenging the result. And I've heard kind of more clear, conclusive victories labelled as robberies by the fighter that lost them. So fair play to Fury for that. But now he's got to work out the right game plan to come back in the rematch. DB Cooper won. Yeah, he's still talking about ethical Daniel Kinahan for some reason. He's gone off on his own tangent, DB Cooper. Much unlike him, not as anyone who is regularly in the live chat will testify. But yeah, Ayman, how much chance do you give Fury going into that rematch? And everyone's talking in the chat about the right tactics. Is it purely a tactical issue at this point to decide if Fury gets revenge or not?
Yeah, huge chance. Absolutely. It's still it's not a 50-50 fight anymore, I believe, but this is still like a 60-40 type of fight here because of how the way the fight went. Really, it really kind of just spun on a sixpence, as the old kind of saying is, with a big overhand shot that Usyk threw, and that was because Usyk was, whilst Fury looked like, and he was dominating in those rounds before the fight kind of changed. It was because of a pace that the fight was being fought at, and not in the pace in the sense that there was loads of punches being thrown, but there's a lot of thinking in there. There's a lot of movement in there. There was a lot of activity in the form of having to be on and be capable to just fire back with something or counter or be in a position to absorb something and then fire back, because that's a high level, high pressure type of fight there, and that's a draining type of fight there. And that's when Fury really took that shot. And I think some of the endurance and stamina had gone, which meant he was absolutely just out on his feet when that punch came, coupled with how big the punch was. And that's not from, like, Usyk isn't a one punch hitter quitter, but he was hit. He was hit like how even Wilder couldn't hit him, the effect of it. And that's because of stamina for me. And I think if Fury can manage that gas tank a little bit more and maybe just concentrate a little bit more here, then it's razor close here for me. And I thought it was. For me, I had Usyk by winning by a point in that fight, and I've not watched it back and gone back to score it once. You know, the dust kind of settles and the excitement kind of falls back on it. But I'll go with that, and I'll stand by that as my scorecard. So there's really a lot to game plan here for the Fury team, and he said as much. And I know that Fury's kind of joked around with his game plans in the past, and he says one thing and he does another. And part of the Fury mind games is you cannot trust the word that he says. But after the Wilder fight the first time around, he said, "Look, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna take it to Deontay Wilder, and that's what I'm gonna do." And Wilder's team must have thought, "Yeah, this guy's joking. He's gonna dance around for the fight, and we'll just get to him again. Don't worry about it." And another referee will call it off. Well, actually, he did. Yeah, wasn't joking around. He kept to his word, and he proper took it to Deontay Wilder. And we saw how the two fights afterwards formed. And he said as much here in the interviews that he's done this past weekend. He says, everyone knows what the game plan is. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to take it to Oleksandr Usyk. And I think he is. I think that's exactly what he's going to do. And I think you've heard it a million times before, but I'll repeat it again. I think he'll use his size, and I think he'll use his size to his advantage in terms of just gripping onto him and just bearing down on him, trying to drain Usyk from being as strong as he was in the stretch of the fight. And that's what it's got to be here for Tyson. He's really just got to kind of bank on his power in the ring, although he's not a big puncher himself too, but it being too much for Oleksandr Usyk and finding those holes in his game. This is a guy now who, for Usyk, where some of the intangibles have got to come into play as well for me when I think about it, because he's climbed the mountain. He's done the thing that all the heavyweights want to do. He's done the things that all kids have dreamed about when they're little kids, when not anywhere near heavyweight, and they dream of being the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, dream of achieving things that the greats like Lennox Lewis had done and being the next to do that. He's done that now. So how do you keep that motivation, as high as you can and keep yourself there when you've achieved it? Does that drop? Does the levels change? This is a guy who doesn't like being at heavyweight. He hates having to eat up at heavyweight. This is a guy now who's now taking part in movies. You want to talk about one step out of the sport when you start taking part in movies, you're going that sort of way. If I look at it from the outside looking in, every fighter has different businesses outside of it. But when your concentration kind of shifts into something completely, when you have to focus on something completely different, it really kind of rings one or two alarm bells in my head as the way I look at the fight. But Usyk is one of those whose mind has always been kind of rock solid, and he's always kind of been focused. You never really see him have a bit of a night off, apart from maybe really the Chisora fight, when that was his first real welcome into the heavyweight division. But anything can happen in this fight here. It's not a fight it's not a fight, I believe, that will turn on one punch in terms of being a one punch knockout. But like Usyk did, it can turn for any moment for either fighter here. And it will be a game plan thing for Fury, but I think he said it as much here. He's going to go for it, and I believe he thoroughly will.
We've got a chat from Matt, a Matt chat, if you will. I'm going to vehemently disagree with the first bit and agree with the second. So he says, Chisora showed the blueprint for how to defeat Usyk. Yeah, I mean, I've never agreed with that, nor do I think that Chisora came even close to winning that fight. I think Fury, Breedis, Michael Hunter even all came closer to beating Usyk than Chisora did. Thought Chisora unsettled Usyk for the first 4 rounds primarily because Usyk wasn't used to that style or competing up at heavyweight with guys much physically stronger than him. And I think once he adjusted to that, it was a one-sided fight. But he also says, Matt, I think Fury would have beaten Usyk on the back foot if he was the Fury that defeated Klitschko. He isn't that fighter anymore, so we'll need to fight. And I do agree with that. I don't think Tyson Fury can get up on his toes and outbox or fiddle his way to victory against Usyk anymore. I think he tried to do that at times in the first fight and it didn't work. I think Usyk's too tricky. I think he's too active. And I think he's too fast on his feet to make that a realistic possibility or realistic strategy to victory for Tyson Fury. So he will have to meet him head on, albeit intelligently. It's not a case of just coming forward in straight lines and getting pinged about. We need to see Tyson Fury intelligently coming forward, avoiding shots on the way in, cutting the ring off rather than following his opponent, and landing to the body as much as he can as well. Fury's an underrated body puncher, but he is good. He can dig to the body. He does a lot of body sparring in the gym as well, always has. Especially against the lighter sparring partners that he has sometimes. And I think if he does all those things, he's got a really good chance because he is the much bigger man. He's the natural heavyweight. He's taller, he's longer, he's much heavier. And he can use all those things to his advantage in a way that perhaps he didn't have the chance to in the first fight. But it has to be done with intelligence and cunning. And those are the sort of things he will get from Sugar Hill Stewart and Andy Lee, assuming he is listening to them both in camp and in the corner on the night. And then his dad, I would hope, is there purely as a motivational figure in the corner, similar to Daniel Dubois' dad, a kind of talisman, someone to look to either when the chips are down or when things are starting to be good and you want a bit of reassurance, a bit of praise, a bit of vindication from the only man that, from that praise really means something to you. And that's usually for a fighter is their dad. I think that's John's role in this rematch if he chooses to accept it. So Matt, I half agree with you. Talk to YouTube says Tyson to win. Shout out to young Nancy, who celebrates her birthday later this week, but will still be, as far as I'm aware, our youngest fan until anyone else tells us otherwise. if there are younger fans out there, please don't get involved in the live chat. It's really not for children. But yeah, maybe one of the parents can let us know if there's anyone younger than Nancy who is about to turn 8. Apologies. Andrew says Tyson will appreciate the chance to go from 0 to hero, so he can double his payday for trilogy and/or rematch Usyk. I think now we will see a true Kronk-style Tyson to stop Usyk inside 6 to 7. Matt says he's best meeting him head on to show he isn't scared. I'm not sure Fury really believed he could beat him, but does now. DB Coupon's advocating for Isaac Lowe, Fury's cousin, to be in the corner. Greedak says Fury is saying he got robbed. He said he was robbed and they gave it to him because of the war. He went on to say he's going to knock him out because he can't win on the cards. Yeah, I mean, he's tempered it a little bit since then. I think the comments about Ukraine were incredibly misguided, obviously. And yeah, he wasn't robbed. I mean, the vast majority of observers felt that he lost what was a pretty close fight. But yeah, I mean, I think he can win on the cards. I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility. But if he's going in with that mentality that he has to knock Usyk out, maybe that will be a good thing. It will certainly make for an exciting fight, although I thought the first one was pretty good to watch as well. Talk to YouTube says, I had Tyson by 7 rounds winning. It's just the round 9 that messed it up. Tyson had him, but John was over-talking when Sugar was talking. That confused Tyson. He didn't know who to listen to. Tyson's a very experienced guy in his own right, though. He knows what the strategy is. He'll have honed it for 10 weeks or whatever in camp beforehand. So it's not simply a case of the corner telling him 2 different things and he's suddenly perplexed. You know, he's a very experienced fighter. He didn't have a really long amateur career, but fighting since he was very young. Yeah, I wouldn't just put it down to that. James Madden says, crackhead beat real head. Lol. No idea what that means. Nat says, Grey Dad Guy Nancy wants me to say hi. Hi, Nancy. You've just got your shout out. Don't be greedy. Andrew says, and no sucking on a crucifix when you're tired this time. Matt says, I think that's the only way. Usyk's fitness is too much for anyone from round 9. Yeah, well, that's the thing. If Fury can, take enough out of him early with the pressure, the leaning on, the body shots and so on, maybe Usyk won't have as much left down the stretch. But it's a big ask. You've got to do all that without getting pinged all over the place yourself. Talk to you. James Madden says he beat Fury at 200 pounds full. I'm not sure what your point is there, James Madden, apart from saying full. But yeah, well done. Talk to YouTube. A boxer only needs the guy who trains and studied what to do, the game plan, but the dad messed it up. It should only be Sugar talking to him, no one else. Yeah, I can't see John Fury being in a corner and remaining quiet, though, when his son's fighting. It's just not going to happen. James Madden says, easy when someone walks in, it punches counter, get this crackhead put off boxing mush. Yeah, I think we're going to have to take you off the chat, James Madden, because you're not making any sense at all. And you're being a bit abusive, I think. Can't say for sure because it's gibberish. But yeah, you're gone, I'm afraid, mate. Who else we got? Talk to YouTube says age does play a role. Toby Bartlett says salute Danny in the chat. What about Ayman, Toby? You've basically saluted everyone except him, which is a bit shady. Buster B says we didn't see the best Usyk in the last fight and he hurt Fury at least on 2 other occasions where Usyk didn't follow up. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think Usyk will improve too. He's been in there with Fury now. He knows what to expect. He can judge the distance better as well. Buster B says, here's how it's going to go. Fury will come out trying to pressure Usyk from round 1 and walks into a straight left. The rest will be history. Yeah, I'm going to be very disappointed if it's all over in a round, I've got to say. Matt says he didn't hold Usyk once, which is a result of fighting on the back foot. He didn't have the chance to tire him with his weight. That's true, because what we often see from Fury is he'll land 1 or 2 punches, then lean on. He'll fall in with his shots intentionally. I've never not seen him do that in any of his previous fights. I'd use that as a strategy. Buster B says, I say we're going to see an early KO of Fury. Yeah, we got that from your last message, Buster B, but appreciated. Lewis Hart of Boxing Social infamy says, Tupac hit him up. Yeah, well done. Lewis told me a great story earlier about someone in our local area in Kent who was inspired by Hit 'em Up and started unloading a gun around here or something. Lewis tells it better, but it's not his episode, unfortunately. Ramoni Mode XD, good to see you again. It says, not going to lie, Danny, I rewatched Usyk Breedis yesterday and had it 115, 113 Breedis. Thunder Rose says, Danny, did you randomly become a Colt supporter? Did it have anything to do with Peyton Manning being their legendary quarterback? No and no. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I got into NFL when Dan Marino was in his pomp. and I was very young, and we're having a terrible season now. Although picked up our second win yesterday, but our quarterback is out for an unknown amount of time at the moment. Got another concussion. Poor Tua Tagovailoa. In a very unlikely event he's watching this, get well soon, Tua. But no, yeah, Dolphins fan here. Although I think this season I've been really impressed by the Commanders. Jaden Daniels looks absolutely brilliant, like CJ Stroud the year before. For anyone who doesn't watch NFL, I apologise for that brief tangent. Ramoni Mode XD says, wish we saw an Usyk rematch with a Prime Breedis. Obviously, that Prime Breedis has now been and gone, unfortunately. DB Cooper 1 says, happy birthday, Nancy. Mentally, she's older than our friend Lewis Hart. Never a truer word spoken in jest. Lewis Hart says, hit him up again. Yeah, I think Lewis Hart's probably taken something. If you're friends with Lewis Hart, please do go and check on him. Talk to YouTube says, he just needs to listen to Sugar and it's all good plan working. I think I got the gist of that. But yeah, if you haven't voted already, we've got a poll at the moment. Who wins the rematch, Fury or Usyk? Please do vote if you haven't already, and we will read out the result at the end of the show. But while that is a huge fight we're all looking forward to on December the 21st out in Riyadh, the Middle East has got more shows before that. I was about to say one, but there's more than one. Obviously, all due respect to CBS and Zerdo Ramirez, who will throw down in November. But this coming Saturday, we've got what may be one of the most snacked Riyadh season cards so far. And that's headlined, of course, by a battle not just for light heavyweight supremacy and the undisputed crown at 175 pounds, but potentially the pound-for-pound number one spot as well. All due respect to Usyk, Terence Crawford, Noira Inoue. But the winner of Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev will have a very strong claim to be the best fighter currently in boxing. Absolutely mouthwatering main event, backed up by a non-too-shoddy undercard as well. Probably the fight I'm most looking forward to this year. I can see why some may say it's more of a connoisseur's fight, similar to kind of Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, in that the Beterbiev and Bivol probably don't have the level of fame enjoyed by some of the heavyweights. And they are both quite humble guys as well. But in terms of the styles, you've got a master boxer in Bivol, great footwork, great jab, against an absolute threshing machine in Artur Beterbiev. Violent, brutal, grinds you down, hard punching, physically strong. Fight was delayed because of the knee injury that Beterbiev suffered. Reports we've heard from training camp is that he's as good as new. I mean, I suppose they're not going to say anything else, are they? But yeah, for the sake of the fight and the fans, I hope that's true. And we're in for an absolute corker, I think, on Saturday night. Ayman, what's your view of the fight?
Yeah, you set it up really well, Danny. So echo all of those thoughts as well too, and just say that these are two both unforgiving fighters in their own ways. Bivol, an unforgiving boxer, he will just box your head off, and sometimes he can be so spiteful in the sense that he won't even go for the knockout. He'll just punish you for 12 rounds, and might even be worse than getting knocked out or stopped by Bivol, because he just gives you no inch at all for any fighter to come back with a mile. He's an absolute supreme boxer and deserves a place on the pound-for-pound list if he isn't here already, and it'll definitely cement that if he does get the victory over Artur Beterbiev. And in turn, Beterbiev, another unforgiving fighter who just looks to seek to pummel you behind real sophistication in his foundation as a boxer as well too. A brilliant fighter who does give you an inch himself as well too, but to open up one in return back. And if you can take that, then fair play to you. Yarde, spirited effort against him. Callum Smith tried. Joe Smith tried. Everyone's tried, but everyone who's tried has been stopped. I was just wondering, I was speaking about this as well last night in the Boxing Asylum, how many fighters have really kind of, instead of trying to go toe-to-toe off of the back of some of the early successes that some fighters had in their career against Beterbiev. I think he's been dropped twice, one very early in his career and the second time against Callum Johnson. And I think people have kind of seen, oh, maybe this is a glass cannon. He's made of more sterner stuff than glass here is Beterbiev. But they've kind of thought maybe I might try and do that and find my own way to send him crashing to the canvas. But I think Brown and Gvozdzik really tried to box with him, and both did quite well, especially Brown, who was able to kind of open up a heinous cut on Beterbiev. But again, both kind of suffered a defeat to Beterbiev. But this is a different type of boxer. This is a guy who still does the in and out style, uses range and reach really, really well. This is about as good as you can get when it comes to boxing. And I'm intrigued about how this is going to matchup this weekend. I am a little bit worried, though. There's a big red flag for me as to some of the whispers that you hear around the industry when it comes to this fight. And the whispers are surrounding Artur Beterbiev. There are whispers that are saying that Artur Beterbiev is getting a little bit old in the gym. He's losing a little bit of a step here. Maybe the injuries have kind of caught up to him. This injury, this ruptured meniscus that he had, has really kind of slowed him down a little bit here. I've spoken to, big boxers who, when they have injuries like this, what does it mean for their training? How much does it curtail their training for, a big fight? How do they work around that? And I remember speaking to Scott Forrest, actually, who's a British fighter who's trying to make his name and trying to kind of find his own opportunities, but he's got like he's kind of heavy set, almost in the build of like Anthony Yarde. If you don't know Scott Forrest at all, you just think of an Anthony Yarde type of fighter or Anthony Yarde type frame here. And I was just thinking, like, have you ever had an injury sort of like that? And he said, like, I've had something similar. And so I said to him, like, what do you do with your training? Like, how do you kind of work around it? He goes, you should be able to train well and not lose kind of any like muscle mass or any kind of atrophy from, your leg, which is damaged. If you train properly, obviously you have to take care of the leg, but you should be able to kind of work around that, and it shouldn't hamper too much of what you do best. So that's kind of like a bit of a assurance from a Beterbiev perspective, but I'm not too sure. I kind of feel like here and I'm hoping we don't get kind of two fighters who are at their prime and two fighters who have showed no real kind of slowdown, or that we don't get one that doesn't quite live up to the billing here. I'm a little bit worried about that. All that being all said, though, if that's not the case, and this is two fighters of the fighters that we've seen before, I'll be back on Beterbiev to get the victory here. I think he was grinding down and slowly get to him, and those shots that Beterbiev, he's just relentless from all angles, relentless. And I think it's going to force Bivol into his shell and eventually force a stoppage. But just with the couple of things that I've heard, like, it makes me kind of want to shift my perspective over to Bivol. But I'm going to back Beterbiev for now, but it's not a confident pick.
And remember, people, Ayman picked Dubois to beat Joshua, one of only 9 from 50 predictions to do so. So you may want to listen to him. And someone else who wants to listen to Ayman now is Toby Bartlett, who says, didn't think Ayman was here. Sorry, Ayman. Salute, Ayman. So there you go. You've got your salute eventually. Belated salute. Thunder Road says, wow, I thought you were a Colt supporter when I used to read your Twitter account, but I haven't in a while. Yeah, my Twitter account took a brutal beatdown around 2 years ago and faded into semi-retirement. I'm also a Dolphins fan due to Dan Marino. Yeah, fins up. Talk to YouTube says, hit him up. Ain't for this show, mate. Keep that out because it's not about boxing. I'm not sure if he's talking to us or not. Ramoni Mode XD says, let's go Artur with a picture of a silver fox. Mr. Beautiful Blue says, it's pretty simple. The winner of the last fight has to be favourite. They're talking about Usyk Fury there. Exactamundo says, I love it if Fury came out and did to Usyk what he did to Wilder in their second one. It would set up an even bigger trilogy. Talk to YouTube says, I think Arthur has got this. DB Cooper 1 says, can't wait for this card. Looks great bottom to top. You lads going to cover this one, or are we still on the naughty step? I like the way you use the royal we there, DB Cooper 1. And I should hope we're not on the naughty step, given that Radio Raheem and Frank Trevitt are currently flying over to Riyadh to cover the show. So they're going to get a bit of a horrible welcome if we find out we're not covering it. But no, we will be there, and we'll be covering all of Fight Week and Fight Night. Ramoni Mode XD says, saw an Instagram video from Arthur of his knee surgery, scar from it. Looks healed, so I hope he's fine. Mr. Beautiful Blue says, Usyk's the best of his generation. So we're just scrolling down. Matt says, two amazing fighters. It will be really interesting. Bivol doesn't get hit easily, so will Beterbiev be able to walk through Bivol? Both have an almost Terminator quality about them. Both get angry, but use their anger to help. Interesting take. Ring Gang TV says, yo, Danny flexing his knowledge on the masses. I like what you did there, Ring Gang TV. That's probably the first time my surname's ever been used as a pun. DB Cooper 1 says, normally I'd back Beterbiev, but I think he's still injured and risking it all for the $10 million payday of a lifetime. Reminds me of Arslanbek Makhmudov versus Kabayel. Crippled, but pounds matter. I think that's a cynical view that we've come to expect from DB Cooper 1, but let's hope for all our sakes that he's wrong on this one. Buster B, talking about Fury, says, we forgot he's got his reputation by beating a lanky, scrawny guy who has no boxing skills and fights on stilts. That's no way to talk about Vladimir Klitschko, Buster B. Deontay Wilder is hardly a yardstick to measure how good a fighter is. I mean, Fury did beat Klitschko before the fights with Wilder. He's also beaten a number of kind of lower rank contenders. You know, he beat Dillian White, who was on a great run of form and had been mandatory contender for quite some time. Beat him pretty comprehensively as well. And a number of other good wins on Fury's record. Yes, he may not have as good a resume as Anthony Joshua, as has often been discussed in the past, but he has performed in the biggest fights and on away turf as well. The reality filter says the ref ain't going to say Fury this time. He's getting folded like a cheap deck chair. Well, there you go. We shall see. But we've moved on from the Fury Usyk rematch chat for now. And we're talking about Beterbiev against Bivol. Like Ayman, I do fancy Beterbiev to come out on top if he's the same fighter that we're used to seeing, if the injury hasn't decimated him in any way. I think Bivol could be well ahead in the fight by halfway. I think he could outbox him to an extent, but I just can't see them going the whole fight without Bivol having to stand and trade in pockets. And I think when that happens, Beterbiev will be the man in charge. And I think he'll use those moments to gain a foothold in the fight and come on strong for either a late stoppage or a points win. But that's just one man's prediction, of course. And it is, as I mentioned earlier, a stacked undercard. I've given my thoughts on Chris Eubank Jr.'s fight on there previously, so I'm not going to go into another rant about that. Suffice to say, it's an outlier. It's one of the non-competitive fights on what is largely a very, very good undercard. Eamon, what's your pick of the undercard? Which fight are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clark contesting for the British title. Again, it was a brilliant fight the first time around. It'll be a great fight the second time around as well, too. Proper ebbs and flows in that fight, and the swings of momentum and swings of fading endurance, and both finding a little bit more from themselves as well, too, to get to that final bell. And it was a brilliant occasion, brilliant moment. I'm glad to see both of them getting another big opportunity on another big stage where they can really steal the show as well here, too. And kind of I'm hoping that they are the chief support to the main event here, and no one else kind of gazumps them, because I saw a running order and it appeared to be the case that one fight was positioned higher than them. But I think I saw in return Fabio Wardley say that no, we are chief support. So I do hope that is the case here. But you can't beat a heavyweight dust up. You can't beat a heavyweight affair where both of them can throw and both of them can take a shot and then fire back as well, too. So blood, guts, and thunder in that one, and a British champion either holding their title or one crowned is always a great moment. So I'm looking forward to seeing Wardley and Clark on there as well, too. I always like to see Ben Whittaker in action as well, and he's in a good fight against a good fighter with a lot of goodwill against him, and a capable one in Liam Cameron, having taken his opportunity since his ban ended. I'm glad to see Liam being the one in the opposite corner to Ben. I just wonder how much flamboyance we'll see from Whittaker, because this is a big occasion for Ben. I think we'll see a lot of it, but I think he might temper it a little bit because of the respect he has for Liam, unless Liam kind of changes the script a little bit here and maybe tries to put it on in the fight week, and Ben might actually try and do a little bit more just to get a bit more of a highlight reel out of it and impress some of the Saudis as well, too, so you can get onto further shows over there alongside his quest to dominate the UK scene and the New York American scene. I saw a video of Ben Whittaker over in New York. It was a real fun little 2-part episodes that Boxer put out. I urge everyone to check it out to see Ben Whittaker and some of his personality. But yeah, 2 good fights there as well, too. Opetaya in with it's a good fight. You expect Opetaya to come through with a victory, but Massey is by no means a pushover. And with respect to some of the matchmaking that Opetaya has had in recent fights, scratch off, of course, the Breeders fights. He's been in match very favorably here. I don't think this isn't quite a favorable matchup here. Jack Massey's definitely in the fight, but Opetaya should come through that fight. But it will be a good one for the IBF Cruiserweight title. And then a bit of history as well, too. I don't want to overlook this little bit of history as well here in the form of Nicholson and Chapman contesting for the WBC World Featherweight title. We've had female fights over in the region, but we haven't had a female world title fight in the region as well, too. And much for all the criticism for Saudi Arabia, they've got to be praised and given the credit for when they're pushing as well to some of the women's here and giving the women opportunities as well too, and looking to progress. So that's got to be applauded just as much as some of the criticism has to be dished out here. But it's the credit here that's got to be highlighted, and that will be in the form of the fight. And I'm looking forward to seeing both of them fight out in action. And we've said what we've said about Chris Eubank Jr. It's not going to be. It's not one I'm particularly looking forward to here. And I do hope it is a tune-up. But I'm not expecting much in the form of a challenge from Kamil Zerameta for Eubank Jr. But I hope there's a big fight at the end of it for Eubank Jr., whether it be a Canelo fight or others. Chris Eubank Jr. needs to push on here now and make the most of the latter half of his career.
Yeah, and make the most of the platform as well. You know, he's up against someone people are expecting to beat comfortably. So don't just beat him comfortably. Take him out. Take him out as early as you can, or at least make a concerted effort to do so. Show us the Chris Eubank Junior, that we haven't seen in all those years since he went over to Turkey and got kind of spat on and shouted at by the crowd and knocked the home favourite, if you like, out in, 3 rounds with a highlight reel KO. That's the Chris Eubank Jr. we need to see against overmatched opposition, I think. The card took a bit of a hit when the Shakur Stevenson, Joe Cordina fight fell by the wayside, unfortunately. But generally, it's a really good undercard. And I'm glad you mentioned Raven Chapman and Sky Nicholson, which I think, apart from the history-making aspect of it, is a really good clash of styles as well. You know, you've got Raven Chapman, physically strong, tough, smart pressure fighter, against a more technical boxer, Olympian in Sky Nicholson. And I think that's a really intriguing fight. It doesn't fall under the category of fights we wouldn't have seen without Riyadh season. I know a lot of people talk about those fights, but it is a fight that's worth watching, and it is on a platform that it probably wouldn't have been on without Riyadh season. So I think that's really cool, and I hope people don't use it as their kind of take a break fight before the chief support on a main event, because I think it'll actually be a really entertaining, watchable fight, as well as the history-making side of it. Waldy Clark too, I think will be incredible. I don't know if it'll be the war it was the first time. I don't know if either of them want that again. It probably took a few years off their respective careers. I think it could be a bit more circumspect, a little bit more tactical this time around, at least for the first few rounds. But ultimately, it probably will descend into a brawl, maybe in the latter half of the fight. I'm really looking forward to that. Liam Cameron will give it his best. He always does. Good friend of the channel as well. We wish him against Ben Whittaker. I'm really intrigued by Whittaker potentially one day fighting Eubank Jr., because I saw Eubank Jr. mentioned it when he did the deal with the partnership agreement with Boxer. Talks about, we're two flashy, charismatic, light-skinned guys. It's a natural fight, something along those lines.
A sexy fight, he said.
A sexy fight. There you go. And I agree with him. I'm not sure now's the right time. I'm not sure if Whittaker's team would want it this early, or indeed Eubank's team, given he'd have the most to lose. But definitely an intriguing fight for the future. And I imagine there will be some sort of rivalry there on Saturday night in terms of who impresses more, maybe who gets their opponent out of there, or who gets their opponent out of there quicker if they both manage to get stoppages. But just a really good undercard generally, and one I'm looking forward to. And it seems like the chat is as well. The reality filter says Wardley and Clark might be fight of the night. I mean, that's a pretty safe bet, the reality filter. You haven't exactly gone out on a limb there. Jack Dutton on the 45 says, I know we've moved on to Bivol Beterbiev, but do you agree that some people are suggesting that you might get a scenario where Tyson Fury does to Usyk what he did in the second Wilder fight? Do you agree? Someone said it on the chat a little while ago. I don't think so, no, because I think Wilder was there to be hit. And once he got hit and knocked down the first time, it was kind of one-sided from there on in. I think Fury possessed advantages over Wilder in terms of technical skills and footwork that he doesn't have over Usyk. So I'd be very surprised if we saw that in the rematch. Dad's Army 1234 says Bivol surprised me when he beat Canelo, so I wouldn't put nothing past him. Yeah, I mean, Bivol was the naturally bigger man, very, very good technical boxer. And I don't think Canelo hits quite hard enough at light heavyweight to kind of mitigate all of the things that were against him in that fight. Easy saying hindsight, of course. Whereas I think Beterbiev is a natural light heavyweight and a bit of, he was even bigger as an amateur, as well, as anyone who's seen the video of him against Usyk will know. He's an absolute machine when it comes to coming forward, throwing lots of punches and cutting the ring off. So this is easily Bivol's biggest test, and also Beterbiev's, which is what makes it, or one of the things that makes it a great fight. Talk to YouTube says, I'm on the fence with this fight with Fabio. They're both great fighters. The reality filter says, Bivol took a clean shot to the jaw from Smith Jr., so he has a granite chin. But Beterbiev is way more skilled than Smith Jr. and hits just as hard. Yeah, well, Beterbiev hits in combination as well. That's the other thing. It's not about taking just one clean shot and walking away from it. If Beterbiev gets to a point, probably in the latter half of the fight, where he can land 2 or 3 in a row, that's when you've got to be looking at whether Bivol could crumble. DB Coop 1 says, big fan. Sorry, scrolled past it by accident. Big fan of Danny Flexen? No. Big fan of Riyadh season Turkey, but can't lie. Wardley Clark ought to be a UK O2 Wembley showdown in the mid-bleak winter, given how shite the UK calendar is. We got the first fight over here, didn't we? You know, let's not be greedy. At least the fight's happening. And it's on at a good time for UK TV watchers like myself. So I'm not going to moan about that too much. Dad's Army 1 2 3 4. I got Clark beating Fabio, even better second time around. I mean, he didn't beat him the first time. Technically, he might have thought he deserved it, but it was a draw. Reality Filter agrees with DB Cooper 1, says 100% it should be in the UK. Thunder Road, got a question for you, Eamon. When are you going to take another holiday to Amsterdam?
It was a stag do, so I'm hoping that my friend Nathan doesn't have another stag do or needs another one, and that his marriage to his now wife goes well, and they're hopefully going to start their family as well too. So it'll have to be another friend, hopefully, that has another stag do, but nothing planned abroad. I'd love to get back to New York as well at some point, to be fair. I've got a mate Jack who's over there now, and he's eating all the pizza. I'm trying to lose a stone, and I'm shifting some weight at the McCracken's gym, and I've got to avoid pizza, unfortunately. But whenever I get over to America again, I'll be definitely plating up some pizza. But for now, I'm just going to holiday in the UK for this week off. So Amsterdam is on the back burner for now.
If you get married one day, where will you go for your stag do? I mean, it would probably be the best man's choice, but if you get to choose, where would you go?
You know what? I really, really like a lot of us reporters, and Lewis is one that kind of is gutted that he missed this one. But there was the Usyk Dubois fight in Wrocław was an incredible fight week, and Wrocław was an incredible location to have it at. And I wouldn't mind going back there again, actually, or maybe a different part of Poland for a stag do. But yeah, for a destination, somewhere like Wrocław was incredible, and I wouldn't mind going back there again. So yeah, I'd say somewhere like that.
Great stuff. Will Lewis be invited?
Depends. Well, you know, Lewis. I'd say I'd call him a friend for sure. But you know, in the boxing world, friends can soon turn to enemies, and maybe we'll find ourselves donning some gloves. And as long as the respect is still after the fight, after we've traded leather and we grow in our stature and friendship over the years, then sure, he will be invited. But for now, he's off the list. He's got some work to do on his friendship and reporting as well too. The club reporter that he is. But yeah, no, I'm sure he will be. I gotta find a lady first, Danny.
Say again.
I gotta find a lady first.
Well, yeah, that always helps when you're planning a wedding. Yeah, but I like to concentrate on the stag do. That's often the best part of a wedding. Buster B says Bivol versus Beterbiev is a 50-50 fight, but I'm leaning towards Bivol stopping Beterbiev on cuts or winning on points. The reality filter says 50-50 fight. I'm edging towards Beterbiev. DB Cooper 1 says to Thunder Road, it wasn't a holiday, it was his stag do. He just doesn't like flexing outside work, so ghosted him. DB Cooper 1, we leave that sort of stuff unsaid. It's subtext. You don't need to bring our, dirty laundry out in public. Dad's Army 1 2 3 4 says Usyk Jr. looks like a meaner, hungrier fighter recently. Yeah, I mean, certainly hungrier when he was cutting weight for the aborted Conor Benn fight, I'm sure. Talk to YouTube says Conor will beat Chris. That's a fact. I think so. You think so, or it's a fact? Let us know. So that's why he's not wanting to fight. He's running from him. I think Conor right now is hungry and upset with the situation he's gone through. Well, you would be, wouldn't you, I suppose? The reality filter says Usyk Jr. would spank Egg Boy, which sounds like the worst superhero ever. Dad's Army 1 2 3 4 says that'd be a great fight. Greedak says, I'm glad Shakur isn't co-main anymore. He's the most boring fighter I've ever seen. Jesus, Greedak, you haven't been to any small hall UK shows in the last 20 years then. Clark Wardley, far more deserving of co-main status. Great fight. I love small hall boxing, by the way, just to clarify. So kind of heard myself talk there, but I've seen some very, very boring fights on the small hall scene. So Shakur at least is, technical boxing at the highest level, even if you don't find it scintillating. Toby Bartlett asked if there's VADA testing for Beterbiev Bivol because of Beterbiev's raised testosterone levels that Team Smith and Eddie Hearn were concerned about, or is it just the UCAD testing that BBBFC uses? I'm not sure if there is VADA or not. I'd have to do some research on that. I mean, it is UCAD that the BBBFC uses, and they do the administration for the Riyadh season shows. But this particular fight with the respective promoters of Beterbiev and Bivol, I'd imagine there would be additional testing, but yeah, I would have to check. Thunder Road tells DB Cooper, I knew Ayman was doing bits. Let's be honest, Flexen isn't a great wingman. His creepiness will always come out eventually and scare females. Thunder Road, I thought we were friends. Right, well, if I ever have a stag do, which I won't, but if I do, you won't be coming. God, you think you know someone? Talk about Big Chungus. Ayman's talking about Big. I know Big Chunk. What's this about Ayman?
Oh no, he says, "How is Ayman single?" And I said, "I know, Big Chungus, I know."
Ah, right, okay. I couldn't see Big. Oh yeah, I've seen Big Chungus' one now. Jack Dutton says, do you think one of the reasons Tyson Fury lost the first fight was indeed because he took him too lightly? He crucially took his eye off the ball and got punished. I mean, I do think that. I was saying it earlier. I don't think in preparation he took his eye off the ball, but I think during the fight, once he started getting in control, I think he became complacent, and I think that cost him. The reality field says, I can see Bivol being 8 or 9 rounds up and then getting KO'd in the 11th or 12th. Andrew says, Tyson looked different in recent interviews, maybe stronger or more solid. And DB Coupon says, who the feck is that guy? I think referring to Big Chungus. Big Chungus loves us. He's not like Thunder Road. He's not a fair weather friend. Big Chungus is loyal to the soil. But yeah, so Beterbiev Bivol, great fight. We're all in agreement on that, if not the result. One person who will have a keen eye on the result of that and targeting the winner, in theory, will be Anthony Yarde, who gave Beterbiev almost all he could handle, January last year? So about 18 months ago. And he made some news in the last few days when it was revealed he will be in the chief support to Adam Azim against O'Hara Davis at the Copper Box. No big deal, you think? He's fought at the Copper Box before. It's not a Queensbury show, though. And as far as we were aware, Anthony Yarde was still under contract to Queensbury. There was a dispute between him and the promotional team over whether he still had a fight left on his contract or not. And now, apparently, as they've announced it, they must be pretty confident he's going to be on the Boxer show. Ayman, how surprised were you by this news?
A little bit surprised because I thought, and I was hoping against that, this issue between Yarde and Queensbury over his contract was going to be a protracted issue that could really see him sit on the sidelines for a number of years, as it has done for some fighters before in the past. So to see Yarde kind of out of the blue be added to a show was a pleasant surprise in a way. But I was hoping it was because of a conclusion that had been made because of the back and forth regarding his situation. That doesn't seem to be the case. Frank Warren kind of sort of alluding, or at least there's a quote going around saying we'll see what happens from there. And it doesn't seem like anything's kind of been solved here. Just more that they're going to push through the situation and just see how it plays out here. And I hope again that this doesn't lead to anything further that can further kind of curtail Yarde's career, because even if he does continue, having something like this in the background is a stress factor. It's a stress adder. It's a, this is a complication that's got to be sorted, and it's a complication. That's the issue. So you always kind of have to take an eye off of whatever your focus is and try and get this sort of thing tied up in a bow. And I do hope that kind of resolution does come here. When speaking to kind of other promoters in the past and they're interested in signing Anthony Yarde, I would have thought, had this been a few years back and had there not been the kind of handshakes and the smiles all around between Warren and Hearn, that Matchroom would have loved to have snapped up Anthony Yarde, and I imagine that would be the case. But now that there's fights being made between the two, and they don't want to kind of cost themselves the opportunities of making big fights and making big money as well too, because the bottom line is their bottom line, because Warren and Hearn say so. They don't want to rock the boat on either end here. So to sign one big fighter from another, which might cause friction, doesn't bode well to the rest of the workings on. So they've kind of swerved that. But Ben Shalom has come in here with Boxer, we believe, and has added Anthony Yarde to the stable, whether it be for one fight or further. We'll have to see. We don't know the details on that. But Ben Shalom hasn't been afraid in the past to kind of go head to head with promoters and have it out behind the scenes. I think that's happened with Boatsy and Coley. I can't quite remember the outcomes of it off the top of my head here, but it has meant that Boatsy and Coley can continue on with their careers and now have. And that's the bottom line here, really. From now putting that aside, I want to see Yarde back out in the ring. He is one of the most exciting fighters for me. He is my favorite British fighter to watch. I find him so exciting in the ring. I find him to be a really charismatic, engaging fighter outside of the ring too. He's a real star potential here as well too. He has a potential to win a world title, and he was one punch away in the Kovalev fight for winning a world title. And I do not want to be speaking of Anthony Yarde when eventually he does hang the gloves, that being his only opportunity to have really won a world title. And I want him to be kind of sitting back in his home and having captured at least one world title here, because he deserves that. I remember one of the shows, in fact, actually it was Beterbiev versus Yarde. And it was one of the shows where we talk about Misfits boxing at the time, because that gained popularity and still is quite popular, not as quite popular as it was. But the point I'm making here is Misfits boxing had kind of cracked how it was able to get boxing fans in from the first fight all the way up into the last fight, and people were engaged and watching all the fights. Whereas in the boxing world, people come and buy your ticket to see whoever it is, and then they F off to go enjoy the rest of the night and they don't stick around. Remember being at Beterbiev versus Yarde, and people were in from 7 p.m. all the way until the main event. And that's one of maybe 2 shows or 3 shows or a handful of shows, if I'm forgetting a couple, but no more than a handful of shows where that's ever been the case in my tenure in boxing. And Yarde was one of them, along with, of course, other fighters on the bill who added to that. But you've got to attribute a lot of that to the fight that was on the table here, and a lot of that to being Yarde being an equation, because he kind of translates over to that region of London as well too. So I want to see Yarde continue. I don't really care which promoter it is. I don't care what broadcaster it is. I just want this to be resolved, and for this guy to have his opportunities and get in those big British fights. Get in with Boatsy now. Get in with Willie Hutchinson. Get in with, because after this fight with Beterbiev versus Bivol, who knows what happens? Who knows if someone retires, who vacates, moves up, moves down, whatever the case is. The belts are going to fragment very in the near future, you imagine, and there's an opportunity there. I don't want to see him not on that boat of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I should note we have reached out to various people around this story for comment. I haven't heard anything back from anyone at Queensbury or from Tunde Ajayi, who is, of course, Anthony Yarde's trainer. But yeah, haven't heard back from those guys. I would imagine that Ben Shalom must be pretty sure of his position to have made the move he has. He's just started to work alongside Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn on these Riyadh season shows as well. So you wouldn't think he'd want to put that in jeopardy in any way. And also he's going to be bumping into his fellow promoters this week in Riyadh at the Beterbiev Bivol fight. So yeah, I don't know if Anthony Yarde will be coming with him and sitting ringside, probably not. But yeah, you wouldn't want to just bump into Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren having just, done something you probably shouldn't have. So I imagine it's all checked out and it's okay. It's not, he hasn't claimed that they've signed Anthony Yarde. It's just that Anthony Yarde's going to be chief support on that particular show, and it's in conjunction with AY Promotions, which presumably is Yarde's own fledgling promotional company. So maybe that's a way around it, because it's more of a partnership than an actual signing. But I don't know. I mean, legally, I'm not sure what the position is. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to catch up with Warren, Shalom, or both over in Riyadh during the week. But yeah, on the flip side, it is good to see Yarde back in action. Really great guy, got the right attitude behind the scenes, works very hard. And we saw him give Beterbiev a really, really tough fight. Did the same with Sergei Kovalev on away turf, and that was earlier in his career as well. Yarde must be in or around his peak right now, so hopefully we do get to see the Boatsy fight. And if anything, this seems to, move it at least a little bit closer. Thunder Road, I am going to read your comment, even though you're now on my bad list. He says, can you imagine negotiations with Tunde Ajayi? I can see him randomly writing lines in the camp in the margins of the contract. Yeah, maybe I should ask him if he's ever done that. Alex Brackpool says, wishful thinking on the poll, Fury fans. I haven't looked at how the poll's going, but just for people who are just tuning in or haven't voted yet, we asked the Fury Usyk rematch who wins. So please do vote if you haven't already. DB Coupon says, does Tunde not watch this live stream? Swear I've seen him in the comments. He did once. Yeah, I texted him just to make sure it was really him. and not someone cosplaying as Tunde Ajayi. I don't know who would do that, but you never know. And it was him, but I haven't seen him comment since. And I did text him this morning. He hasn't replied yet. So come on, Tunde. Let this kid get on with his career. I don't think it's Tunde who's necessarily stopping Yarde getting on with his career, or has been. I think it's just one of those things where one party is, entrenched in their position and the opposite party is entrenched in theirs, and they have to come to some sort of agreement. Maybe they have. We don't know, but we will probably find out before he enters the ring for that show. But we don't want to let you go without talking about the fight that took place on Saturday night in Liverpool. We talked about Tyson Fury's comments at the show, but not about the main event itself, which saw Nick Ball make the first defense of his world featherweight title, pounding out literally a victory over Ronnie Rios, who was game and tough and came with his own ambitions. But really, quite early on in the fight, it became clear there was only going to be one winner. And Nick Ball talked in the aftermath of that victory once again about the possibility of fighting Naoya Inoue if the Japanese superstar pound-for-pound contender moves up from super bantamweight to featherweight. Ayman, you were ringside in Liverpool. What did you make of Nick Ball's performance and potential future fight with Naoya Inoue?
Yeah, it was class from Nick, and this is Nick kind of riding on the crest of the wave of the momentum that he's built off of that Wembley opportunity on the undercard where he fought Isaac Lowe, when he was really kind of brought in as an opponent for Isaac Lowe to beat here, and he just flipped the script here, and he's kind of just soared ever since, apart from the one draw that he had in his career. Which you'd like to turn over into a win and unify the division. He feels like that is his belt, and he will come to get that belt and arrest it off of Ray Vargas. Hopefully, he gets an opportunity to do that. But yeah, he's really kind of riding that momentum, and he's also kind of, it's right timing as well too, because in the Liverpool region, it's a region for where promoters can go there and know that if they put on a good show, fans from the region will come and watch the show. If they put on a rubbish show, Liverpool fans they're knowledgeable fans. They know about boxing. They really follow boxing. They're a hardcore audience. They won't come. So you've got to make sure that you put on a good show, and it was a good show as a whole, with good talent on there as well too. But Nick Ball kind of, in terms of his timing here, this is a region where the baton is kind of wanting to be passed from some of the fighters from before. You had your Paul Smiths, the Callum Smiths, and Liam Smiths of the world, who Liam's kind of just put a timeline on his career, saying he's probably got about 12 months left here. Callum Smith's kind of, we're not quite sure what he's going to do after he departs from the sport, after losing to Artur Beterbiev and other fighters as well too. Jazza Dickens is kind of getting on as well. There's an opportunity here for someone to really kind of grab that baton and really kind of run with it. And Nick Ball seems to be that guy he's an exciting fighter. First of all, you have just fans baying him on, wanting to see that knockout, and he's reacting to it. He's giving you that from the off here. There's no feeling out process. There's no wanting to kind of take a round or two here. There's no downloading the data. That's not to say he's not a smart fighter, by the way. I don't want to cast that aspersion over to him. He's a very capable fighter. He's not just kind of throwing himself in to get the knockout, and you can see that with a variety of punches that he throws, and some of the punches that he does throw in there. They're not just willy-nilly. They're definitely thought of between him and his corner. But yeah, the bottom line is, what you see someone who really wants to go for the knockout and entertain that, even though maybe it doesn't quite work out from the off. He's just trying to grind you down and get it, and that's what happened against Ronnie Rios. Ronnie Rios really had to earn his way through the first kind of 3-4 rounds to get to the later rounds here, and then he would have kind of banked on Nick Ball kind of gassing out towards the later rounds. And it did seem like Nick Ball was really kind of slowing down. He took quite a few punches there, and I'm describing Nick Ball as a pull no punches type of fighter, but he understood where he was, and he understood that he had to pull a few punches in the mid rounds to conserve himself, because it was such a pace that he was putting on Ronnie. But he got it in the end, and it was an emphatic finish in the 10th round where he kind of punched Ronnie Rios outside of the ring there, and the towel came in, and it was a good victory. You just wondered as well too, when someone's been at the top of the mountain, how they kind of fare when, with respect to Ronnie, the opponent isn't a big spotlighted opponent as well, and where their mindset is. But Nick Ball's always kind of been that laser focus, man, a few words type of guy, and he was in there in the ring. And a lot to like about Nick Ball here. I do hope he gets a big opportunity next to whoever it's against. If it's against Inoue, if it's against a unification fight in the division, any fight in prospect that Nick Ball features in, because of the way he fights and because of the way the division is at Feather, it's an exciting type of fight there. So it could be anything. The idea of it being Inoue, I'm not sure is really likely at the moment, because Inoue seems to be staying where he is and staying put. I think Goodman is next in line here for now. But there's life in Nick Ball in this division. I don't think he's looking to leave anytime soon. So they might meet in the future. But I wonder if they might try and see Liam Davis to that opportunity, or the winner of Davis versus Masood to that opportunity against Inoue before they do Nick Ball. But yeah, exciting fighter indeed, Nick is, and I can't wait for his next fight.
Yeah, I mean, as the chat have pointed out, the mandatory for his WBA belt is Stephen Fulton. I think that'd be a really interesting fight. It's the type of style that we haven't seen Nick Ball compete with too often, particularly at the elite level. Fulton's only defeat is, of course, to Inoue, so there's a measuring stick aspect to it as well. So that's a fight I'd quite like to see, but I'm sure Nick Ball will be looking for unification fights, which may take precedence over accommodating his mandatory challenger. We'll wait and see. But he did everything that was asked of him at the weekend, and absolutely hammered poor Ronnie Rios, who gave it his all. Can't criticise him. Dad's Army 1234 says, I like how Ball is smaller than all his opponents and probably gets a little underestimated until they step in the ring. I think the fact that he's short, though, also means he's piling on that 9 stone into that compact frame. So physically stronger, low center of gravity as well. He's going to be bullying the kind of quote unquote bigger opponents on quite a regular basis. I guess the problem will come, if it does, when he's fighting someone bigger, taller, rangier, and he can't get past those long levers. They're that good at judging distance. They've got great footwork, but we haven't seen that yet. So it's hard to count Nick Ball out, even against, the tallest and rangiest opposition at 126 pounds. But yeah, I think a fight with Inoue is a mouthwatering prospect for maybe 2025, but we shall wait and see. So before we round off for the day and say our goodbyes, we want to get the result of the poll. So Modfather Vinny, if you can hear me, please do give us the result of the poll. We asked the rematch on December 21st, Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk, who wins. We had a very good voter turnout, and it's not a landslide by any means. But Fury, somewhat surprisingly for me, has come out on top, 60% saying Fury wins the rematch, 40% Usyk. The majority of fights, majority of rematches do go the way of the first fight, but 60% of our viewers are backing Fury to turn things around. Ayman, what do you think of that?
I did say this is a 60-40 type of fight, but I didn't think it'd be 60-40 in the favor of Tyson Fury. I think Oleksandr Usyk would have come out in front, but I've seen this kind of rhetoric online that people are just getting this feeling about Fury, and I think Vidal, I don't want to speak for any fighter, but I'm pretty sure Vidal Riley might have said a similar sort of thing as well too, and a couple of others, but he just kind of springs to my mind as one of those who's kind of said that. And I get where they're coming from because of just how those kind of middle rounds went before it did turn in that fight. And it did look like he was on the way or on course, and then it just sort of changed there. You've really kind of got to factor those type of things in the fight of just how it kind of just slid away from Fury and then kind of compounded into a real kind of moment for Fury where to really kind of hang on. But it was, if you can kind of arrest that moment and you can kind of just shuffle his way through, kind of just really kind of be cute in his way through the fight like he has done beforehand, and one of his biggest moments against Klitschko, then it really kind of changes the way the fight goes here. So I'm not too surprised by this poll result here, but for me, you'd have to give Usyk the edge in just the way that the fight went and how he was able to shift through an extra gear in that first fight, and maybe you'll find it again. Who knows? But it's a real intriguing fight. I can't wait for a rematch. Hopefully, it happens.
Jack Dutton casting a bit of doubt into whether it's going to happen, Ayman. Jack Dutton on the 45 says, if Ball could get past Fulton, I'd love to see him against Inoue, you and me both. The reality field says Usyk stops Fury this time. Well, hopefully, unless Ayman knows something we don't, we'll find out on December the 21st. Really appreciate you all tuning in. Please do give us a thumbs up and a subscribe if you haven't already. If you're watching on playback rather than live, you've missed out on the live chat, the wonderful live chat. But please do leave some comments. We respond to most of those as well. But as is customary, Ayman, please regale the audience with your closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you for everyone for tuning in. Make sure if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to Seconds Out, and make sure you tune in to Seconds Out Live as well too on some of the leaner fight weeks as well. We very much appreciate all your contributions, questions as well too in the chat, and some of the candor and banter that you guys give as well too. So make sure you tune into the leaner weeks as well. We love you to participate. There's a big fight happening this weekend in the form of Beterbiev versus Bivol. And whatever happens on the main event or the undercard, we will be there keeping you abreast of all the action in the week. And of course, the post-fight reaction as well too, for what should be a monstrous event over in Saudi Arabia. So if you haven't already, make sure to check in on some of those videos and the predictions video that we put out as well to catch some of the industry and what they think about the fight. A razor close fight indeed. But for now, that concludes this week's edition of Seconds Out Live. Thank you once again for joining in, and we'll catch you guys from myself, Ayman Khan, Danny Flexen, and Vinny, the videographer behind the scenes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one.